Hey everybody, I'm Ron Jackson, and we're going to be talking about learning how to do chord melody and the basics you have to learn about chord melody. So let's get started. Before you do that, please subscribe and hit notifications to Ron Jackson Music and follow me everywhere at Ron Jackson Music. And let's get started. So that's funny. I just started off with a song called Love Me or Leave Me. I've heard Billie Holiday sing it a million times. And I played it with singers, but I've never done it as chord melody like I just did. So what I did is I just took this real book. It's one of these types of many real books I have. This one like this. And I just was sight reading the music. Now, if you look carefully, this song has like the melody and the chords. And what I do particularly when I'm reading these melodies and chords is that, you have to, to be a jazz guitar player, I'm not using any tabs or anything like that. I know where all the notes are on the guitar neck. I trained that way, and I do write in tabs, etc. But in general, I do everything by reading and knowing my chord voicings. So some of the basics of actually playing, jazz guitar is knowing how to read and knowing your chords and knowing how to read the notes, etc., on the staff and finding them on the guitar neck. That took me years and years and thousands of hours of practice and experience and gigs and stuff. So what I basically did was I took the melody that's written here, okay, and I actually played it. I played the chord like for the first chord was actually an F minor chord, for example. Looks like this. Okay, I picked a harder key. This is a minor key, basically, and it ends. I think it ends on a major. So they say consider that a major key. So it's in the key of A flat major or the relative minor, which is F minor. Okay, and what you have to do when you're doing chord melody, you have to really be able to see the relationship of the melody against the chord. So the melody starts with this note here, C, and then it goes down to C here. I'm reading all these notes, okay? And it's a scale, basically. It's actually a C, it's an F melodic minor scale. So from studying lots of years of harmony, I know this scale, I can tell what the scale is, by playing it and hearing it. But my point is for you to actually try to learn how to do chord melodies. So what I try to see is that C note, what's that note against the F minor chord that I'm playing, which is the very first chord, okay, in this progression. Now you can actually get a book, like a real book or like an iReal Pro that I have on my phone. So just make a note about that, and you can just look at chord changes and learn how to play chord shapes. But you have to get the melodies of these chords, of these songs, actually, to be able to play chord melody. So what I try to do, what I try to teach my students is this. You have to see how the melody note functions against the chord. So that takes some theoretical knowledge. So, for example, a C note on an F minor chord is the fifth. We call it the fifth. It's like the root is F, and then the flat 3, which makes a minor, is an A flat, and then the fifth is C. So it's F, A flat, and C. So when I'm playing, I do this automatically without thinking about it. I'll see a C, so I'll just play the C on top of the chord. When I'm playing that chord, when I hit the melody note should sound louder. So the melody note's like this: love me or leave me. So it goes down from a C to a C an octave lower. Now I've never done this song as chord melody before, just so you know. Then I go like this. So I know my different voicings of the F minor with the C on top. So I'll do that C minor like this. etc. The next chord is actually a D minor 7 flat 5. So when I get to a D minor 7 flat 5, you have to know your obviously you have to know how to play a D minor 7 flat 5, which is like a D, F, A flat, and C chord. D, F, A flat, and C. Then repeats. No, I've been practicing this for years, so I know all my arpeggios. Of course, I need to practice more and still keep working on this. But so I know that this melody note here is the flat 7 of the next chord, which is D minor 7 flat 5, which is a C. Then the next chord is a D7, a G7, excuse me, with a D on top, which is the 5th, okay, of the G7. Okay, the D on top of a G7 is the 5th. G, B, D. G is 1, B is 2, D is the 5th, and then the A flat, I mean the F is the flat 7. And then the next chord is a C7 flat 9 with an E on top of the melody. So it sounds like this. It actually starts with an F minor 6, which is a little bit more complicated than F minor 7. So it's played like this. So what I did was all those chords I just played, I knew the function of the chord and the melody note, or the function of the melody note against the chord. Okay, you should be able to do this with any song that's chord melody. Etc. Okay, so that's one basic way of doing chord melody. You have to be able to find the chords, the melody, you know, the melody note against the chord. Now that takes, like I told you, a lot of practice. You have to really know how to do these relationships. So when I'm actually looking at sheet music like this, again, this is called "Love Me or Leave Me," just to remind you. What happens is, for example, in a lot of music that's written like for jazz and stuff like that, the melody note is written way too low for the guitar to play. It's written, this is actually written, so I actually had to transpose this up an octave. That means the original note was this. Now what happens is, first, the guitar is a low-pitched instrument, okay? It sounds octave lower than what's written. So this is like in the bass register kind of right now. And that's way too low to play a melody, you know, with chord melody. But you can actually do that, because I did an article on Acoustic Guitar Magazine where you could put a melody in between a chord, you know, and we're not going to get into that right now. You can go like this. No, I can't do. I could do the. So I put the melody in between the two and the chords now. So you could actually do that, but that's really an advanced way of playing chord melody. So I'm just trying to show you how, and most of the time I play, you know, I do chord melody, I put the melody on top. So that means for guitar players, it's on your thinnest string, okay? So when you start playing chord melodies that are like way in the bass register, you're really playing in the bass register, so you don't want to be in the way of the bass player. So what I did was also, another thing about chord melody is this. So I'm trying to cover all different angles of this in one lesson. This is going to be a long lesson today. So what I actually do is, you don't have to also play the root of the chord to do chord melody. I tell my students this all the time. You don't have to play the chords of the actual song too. That's called reharmonization later. But what I try to tell my students is, you should be able to at least do something like where you can just play 2 notes for the chord. So those, they call them dyads, D-Y-A-D-S, like triads, but smaller. Some people, I consider that a chord, but people don't consider a chord unless it's 3 notes or more. But I usually consider a chord 2 notes or more. So you can do different techniques. I was basically using thirds. A third is basically 3 notes away from the other notes. So this is 1, 2, 3. So So I started with the A flat and a B flat. So I played the A flat and the C together. That's 3 notes away. If you write down the staff, it's 3 notes away. A flat, B flat, C. So here I did something different. This is a dominant 7th chord. I had to put a flat 7 there. I could just do thirds. These are really simple techniques. So you don't have to use the bass note in the chord. That's my point. You could put the bass in there. You don't have. You could do the inversion. Actually, when I started off, I think I was not playing the bass note. I was going. You can go like this. Sorry. No bass notes at all with that. That chord voicing. That melody note. I didn't use any bass notes there. Oh, actually, I used a little bit of one here. Now this time, no bass notes. Now here's with the bass notes. So you don't have to play the bass note on every chord too, and you could use different kinds of voicings, thirds, sixths. All kinds of different ways to play melody notes. Fourth. Actually, you can do anything you really want to that sounds good, but that's a whole different story. Also, another thing I like to emphasize when you're playing melodies over chords, that you really hear the melody. Sometimes people will play and you can't hear the melody. So what I did was I kind of tried to, the melody sounds equal to the chords. You have to actually hit the melody note louder. Now, it took me years and years to get this technique together, but when I'm actually picking the note of the chord and I'm playing the melody on top, I tend to hit the melody note louder at the end. Hear that? See what I did? So I put that melody, that takes a little practice. Now it depends if you're playing fingerstyle guitar, you would have to do the same thing. Now classical guitar players, they apply more pressure. They can do it individually, but the pick is harder. Etc. Okay? So that's another technique you can use to actually play chord melody a lot better, okay? Is to make sure you hear the melody, don't lose the melody, okay? Now, I'd like to cover another technique. So usually when you're doing chord melody too, you don't pick melodies that are this hard usually. I'll look through a book or try to learn a song where, this song has a lot of eighth notes, which is, faster than a quarter note, or a whole note or a half note. So there's some songs out there where you could play like, if you just go through a book, like, let's say I Got You Under My Skin. This is a great song. Frank Sinatra used to sing it. You see how many notes there are? There are quarter notes now. It's much easier to play chord melody when you're actually playing quarter notes, half notes, whole notes, because you don't have to play as many notes in the chord and they don't go by as fast. It's much harder to play melodies, chord melody, like the song, like a bebop song, like Charlie Parker's Bebop. No, sorry, this is Dizzy Gillespie's Bebop, excuse me. Okay? So that's really hard to play chord melody because there's just so many notes. So I would have to do things like this. The melody goes like this. That's a lot of notes. I would have to go. I could do it, but I have to really work out the fingerings. I didn't do whole chords. I did thirds. It sounds really cool, but it's really hard to do that kind of stuff. So we tend to play chord melodies with melodies that are that have long note lengths, like whole notes, half notes, quarter notes, etc. So like a song like "I Got You Under My Skin" sounds like this. So another important sounds like this. So the most important thing about chord melody too is to hear the melody and know how to play the melody without the chords first. Just be able to play the melody by itself, because the melody is actually the most important part of the song. Like if you play the melody wrong, you could be like you could be like someone who's not a musician at all. Let's say an engineer. If you play the melody wrong, and it's one of their favorite songs, like "It's My Life" or whatever, whatever pop song or jazz song, and you sing "It's My Life," it's really something really terrible. They'll know you're wrong. So it's important to know the melody really well when you do chord melody. And my suggestion is you really learn the melody well and the chords separately really well. Then you put them together and start doing chord melody. And the best way really to learn chord melody too is actually learn arrangements. I'm telling you the basics right now in a lesson here on YouTube or wherever you're going to be watching this. But I learned arrangements in the beginning when I started doing chord melody, because that's how you learn how the flow of putting the chords together in melodies. And it's a lot of work. And I've been to workshops like Joe Pass. He was a master when I was in college of the chord melody. So, and you got to learn all the different techniques like I'm showing you. But the most important thing is have that melody really, really played well without the chords. So like "I Got You Under My Skin" goes like this. I've got you. Now, so that melody, if you look here, is written, let me throw my book on the floor here, is like really written way too low on the guitar. So I automatically play that up an octave. That means 8 notes away from the first note. So this note was here. So I have to play that up. It's exactly the same note, but with a higher pitch. So I would play that like this. Now, if you're playing that up an octave and you have a hard time reading on the guitar, that's when you really need to learn how to practice your reading or memorizing the notes. Wes Montgomery wasn't a great reader, or I couldn't read at all actually, but he had an ear, he could find the notes. So you would have to really know the notes on the guitar neck not to be able to play this. Now it sounds a lot better. Okay, so that's the basic melody. Okay, I've got you under my skin. Then the chords are just F minor 7. I've got you under my skin. That's basically, there's some other chords there, but this is basically the chords. It's F minor 7, B flat 7, or B flat 9, dominant 9 they call it, E flat major 7. So there's only 3 chords basically. There's some, of course, reharmonizations in between there. But if you're going to play chord melody, you got to be able to know that chord and know the melody against it. So it starts like this. Now, if you look carefully, this is kind of like the first chord we learned in the last song, okay? This is the 5th on top. Now this is the root on top. And it goes to the 3rd of the E flat major 7. And then to the B flat dominant 7, this is the 9 on top. On the E flat major 7 goes to the 9 and to the major to the 3rd. Then the 3rd flat 3 of the F minor 7. Then it goes to the major 7 to the 6th. Then it goes the flat 7. Okay, you see that? It goes to the 5th here on the major 7. So you have to really know your chord scale relationships when you're playing these chord melodies. So if I'm playing through this, you have to make it sound convincing. So did is I basically just played through the song, reading the melody, and playing the chords under it. Now that takes a lot of practice and a lot of years of experience of doing that, but I've been doing this for years, doing solo guitar gigs. So the best way to do this is just start learning arrangements and getting a teacher to help you with learning a melody and arrangements, and learning all the chord voicings you possibly can. So I can keep talking more about all these different techniques, but the most important thing to summarize everything we talked about today is that you should definitely learn how to play melodies really well and the chords that go to the melody really well of a jazz standard, okay? And then you should be able to take that melody and play it up an octave. Don't read it as written on the music, or play it as written, because if it's too low, you got to make sure your melodies are transposed up. So then you got to find how the melody is related to the chord. If it's the fifth, the root, third, it could be anything, a major seventh, sharp 11. It could be all kinds of different notes, depending on how advanced the song is. Then when you play, you got to learn how to play the melody on top of the chord and make sure the melody is louder. Now you can actually play, you have to learn how to play the right chord under the melody, and then you don't have to necessarily play the root under the of the chord when you're playing it. It could be any kind of voicing. Particularly, you should know how to play the original voicing that you can reharmonize later. And you should be able to do this with many songs and learn arrangements of these songs. Another thing I forgot to mention is you could also learn how to do melody, chords, and walking bass lines mixed up. So I kind of do that now. I've been doing that for a long time. So another technique is to play the melody like this. So what I did was I just did a really basic quarter note bass line, just playing mostly roots, because I'm sight reading this basically right now. But if you want to get more into bass lines and playing chords with the bass line, you could actually go like this. You could actually play more complicated bass lines. You could just go like this. See, I'm doing a real walking bass line, but that's a whole different world of doing chord melody, doing the walking bass line with the chords and the melody on top. So that's a really advanced level that I still need to keep working on. When I'm doing this, I actually have to have an arrangement. And I play 7-string guitar too, where the walking bass lines get really low, so it can get really complicated. So that's another technique you could actually use. Okay, have like a walking bass accompaniment to keep rhythm, sound like you're a band, like a one-man band, etc. So thank you everybody for watching. I'm Ron Jackson. Again, if you enjoyed this lesson and an overview about chord melody and how to develop it, please follow me and go to my Patreon account at Ron Jackson Music, patreon.com/Ron Jackson Music, and join my Patreon. And I have some arrangements there that are free. And also you can go to my website and purchase these really cheap, $5, $6 arrangements of Fly Me to the Moon, Giant Steps, Autumn Leaves. I'm going to be putting more up there. So you can learn how to do chord melody for 6 and 7-string guitar. And if you have any questions, please send them to me. And please share this, subscribe, and hit the notifications button. I'm Ron Jackson. And thank you very much for watching my YouTube video on chord melody and how to develop it and the basics of chord melody. And I'll try to get more in depth with with this. And if you have any questions, please leave a comment. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys very soon on the internet or someplace else, live hopefully. And have a great day. Ron Jackson, over and out. Bye-bye.